Chinese migrants are the fastest growing group crossing from Mexico into U.S. at the southern border. When I show you the escalation of numbers, I think you're going to go, ooh, wow. What's the population of China? How many of them are going to come here? Let's get into it. Here we go. Now, 60 Minutes has a really good show. And I'm basically reading the article from that. But I'm going to let you watch that one. Let's watch this video here. Here we go.
And migrants from China are emerging as the fastest growing group of people trying to cross the southern border into the United States. Officials saying more than 24,000 Chinese nationals came into the country via the southwest border back in 2023. And if you do the math, that's more than 10 times higher than the year before.
37,000 Chinese nationals throughout all of the U.S. border. 37,000. So another 13,000 on top of that came through Canada.
Stephanie Haynes joins us live. And Stephanie, border officials say one of the driving forces here is social media.
Exactly, Mark. You know, I spoke to someone who used to work in Border Patrol, and he says social media really helps demystify the process of passage into the United States, especially from the southern border. And if you take a look at CBP data right now,
demystify the process or encourage human smuggling, sex trafficking, and, bringing some drugs in. That demystify. I get it.
Year to date, this fiscal year, there have been more than 18,000 encounters with Chinese nationals at the southern border. That is already way ahead of the record pace that was set last year. If you just take a look at some of the data we'll pull up for you, fiscal year 2023, there were more than 24,000 encounters at the southern border with Chinese nationals, up from 2,100 the year before and 450.
Okay, that's the number I want you to look at right there. From 450 to 2,100, all the way up to 24,000 in 2023. They're figuring it out. They're hearing stories. They're hearing stories of people who made it, and they're going, I can do that. TikTok, here we come.
The year before that. And this is video that News Nation captured along the border coming up in a second here near San Diego late last year. There could be a number of reasons why this is happening. That former Border Patrol officer says that based on his experience, people are coming over because they may want to leave life in China. Often they fly through Ecuador because there's no visa requirement there. And then they make that long journey up to the Texas-Mexico border. And he says a lot of how they learn to do this is through social media.
Social media, various platforms have become an enormous tool in aiding illegal aliens trying to enter the United States. Whether they're coming illegally, trying to abscond, or those that are surrendering at the border and claiming asylum.
Department of Justice data shows that more than half of Chinese nationals who have applied for asylum have been granted that last year, compared to the going rate of about 14% on average for all nationalities. We have reached out to CBP for comment.
Okay. Above 50%. Remember that stat. Above 50% of the Chinese nationals are getting protection, whereas 14%-ish for all other nationalities. What's going on there? What's happening there? Way over 50%? And these are people that are claiming they know what to say when they get here. You got to be able to say the right words. With political asylum, we're being persecuted in our home country. Well, these are folks that just want a better life, which, hey, if I was in the same position, I would probably do the same damn thing. It's just that we've got this process in place that's supposed to be happening, and they figured out a way to circumvent it, and they've cut the process. My mom saw this story on 60 Minutes, and my mom is Australian, still has Australian citizenship. She had to jump through all kinds of hoops just to get basically a green card and be able to work here, even though she's married to my dad. All kinds of hoops. And I hear this same story. People coming from India legally, people coming from, I've got family members that married, Australian. One of my cousins did. The process to come in, if you're not going through the southern border and literally being smuggled in by the cartel, It's horrifically expensive and super time consuming. And, you just don't know. And yet these people just walk across the southern border. All right. And then Border Protection acts like TSA. I'll get your picture, get you in the system, and welcome to America. Right? We'll get you a work visa as soon as we can. Don't worry. You can drive a scooter in New York City and do some DoorDash, and it'll be all fine.
And are still waiting to hear back, Marquis.
All right. Stephanie Haynes, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider.
The News Nation's got some good stuff. I have been enjoying them more and more. I don't know a ton about them, but I'm finding myself watching more and more of their content. The number of migrants arriving at the southern border is unprecedented. Last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded 2.5 million instances, somewhere between 2.4 and 2.5 million instances of detaining or turning away people attempting to cross into the United States from Mexico. So what's the fastest growing group among them? Chinese migrants. Yes, you heard that right, Chinese. And I've been talking about this for a while because I've been reading about it. And you're kind of like, wait a minute. How does that make sense? China? And I knew that they're flying into Quito. They're flying into Ecuador because no visa needed. That's the one key component from that. Take away no visa in Ecuador. All right. So they get there and then they figure it out on TikTok, which is a Chinese social media company that sells your information to Chinese government, whomever wants it, whomever's willing to pay. So yeah, make sure you use your TikTok a lot, right? I mean, that's why I think there's a big pushback on TikTok. Everybody loves their TikTok. I just spent 14 straight hours on TikTok. I watched 73,000 videos and my IQ dropped by 16 points. We saw large groups, including many from the middle class, talking about middle class Chinese, come through a 4-foot gap at the end of a border fence 60 miles east of San Diego. I want to go there. I want to go there and I want to see that gap. That gap in the wall, how long is that going to be there after this whole 60 Minutes deal? Remember Ed Bradley, 60 Minutes? Guy was epic. All those stories. Remember watching all those stories? You hear that tick, 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 tick in high school. I watched a lot of news in high school. I was following, Sandinistas, the whole Oliver North thing. I mean, that was some excitement back in the day. We're doing what? We're funding a war doing what? What? Hey now. Oh, wow. Interesting. So the illegal entryway, we're talking about the 4-foot border section in San Diego, an hour east of San Diego. I believe that's the San Ysidro, right? The illegal entryway is a new route for those hoping to live in America. Just after sunrise, we saw the first group of migrants make their way from Mexico through a gap between the 30-foot steel border fence and rocks, ducking under a bit of razor wire and into the United States. We were surprised to see the number of people coming from China, nearly 7,000 miles away. Our cameras, and at one point, this armed Border Patrol agent standing 25 feet away did not deter them because they're acting like TSA agents and they're basically, once they got a little information from them, go on through, you're good. Even though they don't have a U.S. passport, they're not legal. Everybody knows that they're illegal. But current administration's approach to this humanitarian crisis is, bring them in. It's all good. Just bring them in. It's fine. Should be good. They're not up to shenanigans at all. There's no shenanigans going on here. But there are shenanigans, aren't there? We cover them here on this podcast. Shenanigans lately has been cops get jacked. That's, multiple instances of that. All kinds of crazy stuff going on because you've brought in too many people into the country. You need to go back to how it was. You need to have some pushback. You need to go back to an orderly process where people don't necessarily just come on into the country. Because how are they going to support themselves? Well, the communities that they're in, and that's why such a big part of what Greg Abbott has done, he has literally, these border cities don't have the resources to take care of all these people. And when you think resources, think about this. Down in Texas, you had 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 people a day sometimes rushing an area. Well, when that happens, that local town, call it Eagle Pass, whatever, call it whatever border town you want to, there's going to be some people that get cut up on the razor wire. Somebody's going to deliver a baby while they're in the migrant center. Somebody's going to do something. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to need something. They're going to need clothes. They're going to need food. All that takes money, and it's got to come from the local community because that's physically where they are. And so Greg Abbott decided, well, these border towns have been just inundated for years. Let's start shipping them elsewhere. So Greg Abbott has spent, I think, $124 million in bus fare, and then millions and millions of dollars on, private airplane, because it's easier to charter out an entire plane and just get them where they want to go, doing the Lord's work. He's sending people. It's not like Abbott is, forcing people onto a plane, forcing people onto a bus. He is saying, where can I send you? Where would you like to go? And the illegals are saying, I'd like to go to New York City. I'd like to go to Boston. I'd like to go to Chicago. I'd like to go wherever. Nobody ever says Portland, do they? Although, you got big communities of migrants in Portland and Seattle. We just do. We've got them. I think you're going to see a lot more go to West Coast, Best Coast, because Greg Abbott has played whack-a-mole and he's going to move them somewhere and they're going to go west. That's just where they're going to go. They're going to scooch up the West Coast. They're going to start going way more through Arizona, way more through California, as we're talking about this story right here. So did not deter them. Here's images of that hole in the wall. This man, a college graduate, told us he hoped to find work in Los Angeles. He said his trip from Chicago took 40 days. That's a long time to be on the road. Imagine, I just did 4 days down in Texas and, a day trip into Mexico. I get tired doing that stuff, sleeping in a hotel bed, and I'm in a nice place. Not nice, but it's fine. By the standards of these folks, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, VRBO in Eagle Pass, kind of a sketchy area, but I don't mind that. And it was $144. So it was a full-on apartment. It had washer and dryer, and it had full kitchen and bathroom, 2 bedrooms. It was totally fine. But, we did that for 4 days, and I get tired doing that, eating crappy food. These people go on the road for 40 days at a time, sometimes up to 2 months if they're just walking forever, going through the Darien Gap, may or may not, if you're a female, may or may not have been sexually assaulted multiple times. I mean, it's insane. Beat up, people getting robbed. You hear about robberies all the time. And, somebody will ask the group, did you get robbed? Yeah. What'd you do? Well, the people in this country helped us out. We got some money from back home. We're waiting to get money. We're stuck in this, migrant shelter / prison in somewhere in Panama. We're waiting to get money to pay off officials or whatever. That kind of stuff. It used to be kind of that unknown. There's so much social media out there now. There's so many YouTube stories, and you've got multiple. Tucker Carlson had Brett Weinstein on talking about, the Darien Gap. I mean, wild stuff. And I've talked about, if you haven't seen it, check out Bald and Bankrupt, his deal getting through the Darien Gap. I mean, you learn as much from that as you do anywhere, because those guys are actually doing it. And I would love to do the Darien Gap, but I don't want to die. So I'm not going to go there. I mean, talk about it. That's tough. That's a tough hike. And you are seeing people that have little kids, women that are pregnant. Imagine like you're 7 months pregnant and you're hiking uphill, and you've got banditos and people that want to kill you all over. And some of them, some of these people, there's bodies all over. Yeah. You hear about that in the garbage, and it's insane, but it's a known thing. XYZ number of people are going to get through. The cartel's going to, traffic them through. So here is an interesting kind of an exchange from Sharon Alfonsi. What countries did you go through? College grad. This is the guy we're talking about. Thailand, Morocco, Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. It's usually somewhere around 7, depending on, where you start and where you're at. So Sharon Alfonsi goes, geez, yeah, you look at a map, see where you start. You got to go through all those countries to get there. It's not like you can skip around. I think I'll just take the Panama Canal and we'll call it good. 30 minutes later, a smuggler's SUV raced along the border fence and dropped another group at the same spot. And 30 minutes after that, another group. You know why? Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. It's business. It's business, right? It's business. Cartel doing business. Over 4 days, we witnessed nearly 600 migrants, adults and children pass through this hole and onto U.S. soil unchecked. Going back to what I was saying earlier, it'll be really interesting to see if this little gap gets covered up. Because I believe, there's not much past this. I mean, the wall hasn't been built. So you just got to get to this area and then you scooch on through. So we saw people from India, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. I mean, it's not surprising. It's not shocking because everybody knows, hey, if you're going to get into the U.S., they're going to bring you in. They're going to give you a debit card with some money on it. They're going to give you clothes. They're going to give you food. They're going to give you housing of sorts. Yeah, you may have to sleep on the street for a little while, but the numbers got a little wonky back in December. And, there's just too many people at the inn. And those are the big centers that have been set up in Chicago and New York. And here in Seattle, we've got a church that's been just, 500 homeless people and migrants. I'm sure that's working out fine. There's just no shenanigans there. No, it's a story that's happening and there's all kinds of craziness going on. Many of the Chinese migrants who came through will end up asking for political asylum. Sharon Alfonsi, did you travel by yourself or with family or friends? No, just me. Just you? Yeah. The Gap is a global destination littered with travel documents from around the world. Now, why do they drop them there? Well, because they kind of give information and then by the time their hearing comes about, and maybe there's something in their ID, maybe they claim they're from somewhere else. They're ditching their passports. I mean, you can see it right here. This is a known thing at the border, not just the Southwest border, but the Canadian border as well. Anywhere there's a border, because a lot of these folks, I got some issues with the law. So, or they just don't want people to know their identity because they're going to come under a different identity. And, just so many unknowns. With the help of a translator, we learned a little bit about the Chinese migrants coming through. We also met a banker and small business owners. Some of the migrants made a grueling journey through Central America with dusty backpacks. But we noticed middle-class migrants from China arriving with rolling bags. Can't you see at the airport? Because they went through the airport system. They flew. And they've got money. They've got money. Man, I would not do a rolling bag. I would do a backpack. Straight, you can carry more stuff. Rolling bag. I mean, whatever. Okay, yeah. And you imagine carrying a rolling bag through some crushed rock desert? That's going to work out well. And either that or you just got to hold it. These things are heavy. The case that they're in oftentimes is just heavy. But they told us they took flights all the way to Mexico. Some flew from China to Ecuador because it doesn't require a visa for Chinese nationals. They took flights to Tijuana, Mexico. So they literally go Ecuador to Tijuana, and then from Tijuana, it's like an hour east, and they're there. They've got the money to do it. The migrants told us they connected with smugglers, or what they call snakeheads, in Tijuana. Snakehead, that's an interesting approach. And they each paid about $400 for the hour-long drive that ended here at the Gap, because they've got money to do it. The others from all the other different countries, South America and Central America, they don't have that kind of cash. I mean, they just don't. So they're walking. They're doing whatever it takes. Why'd you decide to come to the United States? Through a female migrant translator speaking English. Oh, it's hard to live there. Hard to find jobs. What'd you do? What work did you do in China? She worked in the factory, but now it's hard to work in the factory. Was this trip expensive? Yeah, said the translator. She said it was, and she sold her house to cover the $14,000 cost of her trip to the U.S. So 14 grand versus 4 grand, maybe up to 6 grand, depending on how you're getting around. Huge difference, huge difference. So the Chinese nationals have the ability to generate enough income to make that a possibility. Basically fly on in, have that rolling bag, because they're literally, all right, we're flying into Quito, then we're going to fly to Mexico, and then we're going to get on a bus, and it's going to drive us all the way out here. And boom, away they go. So they've got it down. They've got it down. Last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported 37,000 Chinese citizens were apprehended crossing illegally from Mexico into the U.S. That's 50 times more than 2 years ago. That's because TikTok, they know how to do it. And they've had enough people that have made connections back and said, hey, you could do it. It's doable. So they're hearing more and more, and that creates a vacuum. And so more and more of them will come. Many of the migrants told us they made the journey to escape China's increasingly repressive political climate and sluggish economy. Their economy has slowed way down. Getting a job become harder. They don't want to have kids. They don't want to have kids in that environment, even though now they're being encouraged to have kids because you've got a population deficit. This 37-year-old woman said China's COVID lockdown destroyed her child care business. I could see that. Just not happening. Business just absolutely tanks. She left her 2 young children with family at home. So the goal would be to come here and then figure out a way, make enough money, figure out a way to get your kids here. But somebody's gotta, be the explorer and go do it and just see, what's this look like. So mom went. But if you're flying and you're not going through the Darien Gap, that's what the outrage is, right? Is that they have basically found a loophole and they're exploiting it. And that's what I think my mom was so pissed off about. She was upset that, they basically come up with something that kind of matches up with the Biden administration's version of asylum. And here's the shortcut. And it's on TikTok. Here's what we're doing. And Border Protection will help you come on in. They'll literally escort you on in. Just like TSA. Hey, come on in. Put your stuff on a tray. Take your shoes off. Take your belt off. Yeah, you need to bring all computers and electronics larger than your cell phone going into an individual bin. Good stuff, right? And they don't even have to do that. They just bring their stuff in. Is anybody looking through their bags? Who cares? Come on in. It's all good. Shenanigans, I say. That's what you've got going on. And why did you decide to come to the U.S.? The 37-year-old female translator speaking English, many reasons for work or not entirely. Okay, well, and what reasons? And she ends up saying basically freedom. Willing to roll that dice, come up with freedom. All right, I don't blame them. I blame the current administration for not using the tools, not using the laws that are already established, and then doing this whole jerk about thing with, we need some legislation so I can close down the border. They already had all the tools there, big guy, Mr. Ice Cream Eating Guy. You had those tools available to you because the last guy behind you, he did, and he used them. And guess what happened? Record low illegal immigration. Weird. And then you put the word out that, hey, you know what? It's a free for all. We're not building the wall anymore. And parole, you betcha. Catch and release, you betcha. And the word got out all over the world. It's go time. You're going to make a run for it or run for the border. Now is your opportunity. And it's gotten to the point where people have figured out, even from China. Hey, let's get in there. The answer was in their hands. We wondered how all these migrants knew about this particular entryway into California. The answer was in their hands. TikTok. Well, you learned on TikTok. TikTok is a social media platform created in China. The posts we found had step-by-step instructions for hiring smugglers and detailed directions so that to that hole we visited. You're going to land here. Here's what you're going to do. Literally, I think it was my dad was relaying to me that my mom was saying that they have instructions on how to order an Uber. I mean, it's broken down. They've literally got the map of exactly how to do this from social media. We were struck by just how orderly and routine it all seemed. The migrants walked about a half mile down a dirt road and waited in line for U.S. Border Patrol to arrive so they could surrender. All right. So the big difference between this happening in California is if Texas National Guard gets a hold of you down in Texas, they're going to force you back across the Rio Grande. We've seen that happen. That is literally what they're doing. If Customs and Border Protection gets you an Eagle Pass, there's an area outside of the park where they come in, then they're going to get scooped up and have the TSA service. But not if Greg Abbott's National Guard gets a hold of you first. So it's this hit or miss. Who's going to get the illegals, crossing over the river? The land, we're talking about the migrants in California here after they make it through that 4-foot gap. The land they're waiting on is owned by 75-year-old Jerry Schuster, a retiree. The whole world seems to know that there's a way in and it's on your property. This is the guy who owns it. They're all doing this. They're doing this when they come over here. They come with their suitcases. They come prepared with their computers, just like they got off a Norwegian cruise ship yesterday. I think that's part of what made my mom really mad. She's like, wait a minute. I had to jump through all these enormous hoops and I'm marrying an American. She had me and yet still had to go through all this nonsense. These guys, they literally, they get off the plane and all right, yeah, political asylum. Here we come. Schuster owns 17 acres just north of the border fence and a quarter mile outside of Hlakumba Hot Springs. Okay, so this is not what I said before. It's Hlakumba Hot Springs. A nudist bought Hlakumba Hot Springs a while ago. Tried to, I don't know what happened to that resort, but he tried to get that going. I never followed up. Population, 540. You're an immigrant yourself. Yes, talking about the landowner. Where did you come from? I come from Yugoslavia. And I left Yugoslavia. I went to Austria. I went there 8 months. You came through the front door. I came through the front door, meaning legally. And what do you think about this? They don't care. They come through the hole like they're coming to their own country over here. And nobody doing nothing about it. Schuster says it all started in May. He went to investigate some smoke coming from his property. Get this part. And found migrants burning trees to stay warm. Imagine if you had like an orchard. Yeah, that's one of my apple trees that you just cut down because you're cold. I mean, I get it, but private property? Yeah. Today, his property looks like a messy moonscape, littered with the trash and tents migrants have left behind. Have you ever yelled, "Get out of here"? And and he took some shots at him and he was arrested by police. You can't shoot at the migrants. They arrested you? Yeah, they arrest me. On your property? Yeah, on my property. Yeah, because I just asked them not to burn the trees, not to knock down the fences, and they arrested me. Well, he did crank off a few rounds, just to scare him. And his gun was confiscated. So if you had to guess, how many migrants do you think you've seen coming through here? Maybe 3,000 a week. 3,000 a week. So it's not just California. It's not just Arizona. It's not just the southern border in general. It's a massive, massive area. And this is happening. This is happening on the regular. This article just keeps on going. We're at about the half an hour mark. You guys are probably getting bored. But yeah, this is a thing. Chinese coming into the United States, doing their thing via TikTok. Does it surprise you? Absolutely not on my end. It's like, that makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. Remember when all the political figures were, outlawing TikTok? Did Florida outlaw TikTok? I think. Did Texas outlaw TikTok? I can't remember. Varying levels of that. And at the time I was like, social media. Well, okay, it's owned by China and China's going to sell your information to God knows who. All right. But this is kind of one more reason. You know what the kids are going to do? We don't care. We love our TikTok. We love looking at TikTok videos. It's because their attention span is the size of a gnat. Just tiny. Just, where's my cell phone? I gotta be on it. And I get addicted to my news as well. I need to find out what the latest story is so I can podcast it tomorrow. What's happening? What's going on? What is going on that I'm missing? FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Well, so keep an eye on the China story. That's some wild stuff. It's just what it is to me is it's an assault at those who have done it the legal way. That's bottom line, right? You got to go through the process. But what we're saying and what current administration is saying, even though they're claiming, oh, you've got a crisis now, their actions have led people to believe we can make it in, we can get in. And that has created this vacuum. So why wouldn't more Chinese come in? You know what the Chinese government's going to do? They're going to do a lockdown on this. They're going to flip out if they haven't already. They're going to do something just horrific. And yeah, there we go. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being with me on this one. Love to have you subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like button for this video. I will see you on the next one. Until then, bye for now.